Let him in. Hey, everybody, how are you doing? God bless you all over the country, all over the world. You're tuning in to Small Church, Big Vision with your boy, Bishop-elect D.L. Edwards. Before we get started, I need everybody to do me one quick favor. If you would tag a pastor or a leader and share this on your page, start a watch party in your part of the country. When you come in, don't be shy. Say hi. Say where you're from, where you're tuning from. Dr. Jamal Bryant is going to be on in just a few moments. I promise it's going to absolutely revolutionize your thinking. It's going to bless your life. We are in tonight for an incredible treat. We have recently had the passing of a few of our generals in the faith. And so, because Dr. Bryant is such a poignant voice within our civil rights community, he is called on time and time again to be the voice not only of reason, but of revelation. God bless you, Dr. Bryant.
Bless you, Bishop. Thank you for your patience.
Man, I'm good. You're good with me. I just got off the broadcast watching you.
Oh, wow.
As well,
Thank you.
man. You're one of my favorite preachers in the whole wide world.
You're going to live a long time, sir. Thank you.
And that's no fluff, man. I mean that for real. I appreciate you taking the time out of your enormously busy schedule to talk to us regarding Small Church Big Vision. Our particular mission is to speak to that pastor who may not be seeing mega growth.
Yes.
I think as of COVID-19, the canvas has changed, whereas it doesn't necessarily matter anymore if you have a mega church to have global impact. And so I really reached out to you because you are a very poignant voice in the ecumenical community. Do me a favor, if you don't mind, just to kind of start this conversation off, can you give me what your trek was as a pastor? How did it happen? What was the growth like?
Yeah. So let me go backwards and let me publicly appreciate you for allowing me and affording me an opportunity to share. I speak weekly, literally around the world, but have never been given this topic. And that's why I was enthralled to participate and to do it. And so I'm grateful. I want to say a couple of things that probably, Bishop, are not public fodder, but are necessary for your comrades in ministry to know. In 1999, I was headed to go pastor in Los Angeles, California. There's a church there, and I don't know if anybody is on from LA. There's a church there named after my grandfather, Bryant Temple, in Compton, California. And the pastor was retiring and told the bishop he wanted me to succeed him. And I was excited about it. And I got there, and at his retirement service, I was at the time National Youth Director at NAACP. And at his retirement service, he started crying and said he don't think the Lord want him to retire yet. So that he still got more time. So the bishop, I'm 25 at the time.
Wow.
26 maybe. The bishop looks at me and says, you're a young man. I'm going to come back and get you in a year. So the bishop didn't care that I resigned from my job, that my moving truck was halfway across the country. At the time I was engaged. He didn't care about none of that. So I went back home. I started my church, Bishop, with 43 people, and was doing Bible study in my home. And when we upgraded, my chair of the board, ironically, ran a nightclub. So he let me use the nightclub for church. And so we began, and I didn't know what it is. I'm AME, for those of you who don't know. I'm third generation AME. My father was presiding bishop at the AME church. And those of you who have any interaction with AMEs know AMEs don't do church plans.
Right.
You just wait for somebody to die, retire, or get moved. For me to plant a church as a son of a bishop, I had no model, I had no paradigm, I knew absolutely nothing.
Wow.
But I trusted God. My heartbeat has always been civil rights. And I became a pastor kicking and screaming. And I say this to pastors all the time, that Martin Luther King, and somebody please write this down. I want you all to have it, and it's going to be the springboard
Yes,
of
sir.
this entire conversation. Martin Luther King never pastored more than 350 people. Never.
Wow.
And so this whole notion of mega being significant is a lie.
Yes, sir.
Dr. King, with 350 people, changed the entire world. You're going to have to change perspective. I want to put on record for critical thinkers amongst us today. I want to put on record that those of you who are over 40 have witnessed the birth, the life, and the death of mega churches.
Yes,
And
sir.
I am saying that to you as the pastor of one. I do not know, Pastor, if I will ever see 8,000 people in my building again.
Great.
I think that the small and the medium churches are those that are going to thrive because of the psychological trauma of COVID-19. Hear me and hear me well. People are going to be afraid to be in crowds,
Yes, sir.
but will feel more comfortable in community, family, and neighborhood churches. And so coming out of COVID-19, the churches that will thrive are the churches that previously were ignored, previously were overlooked. So what has happened because of streaming, if it takes 30 days to create a habit, and we have now been out of church for 120,
Yes, sir.
for the very first time, the body of Christ will have to do reverse evangelism to hear this, to make saints come back to church.
Yes, sir.
I ain't even talking about sinners.
Yes,
For
sir.
saints to come back to church will
Right.
be an evangelistic thrust. And so people now have been spoiled by praise, pancakes, and pajamas, that they're able to worship God from their living room, from their bed.
Yes, sir.
And now you want them to drive 30 minutes, fight for a parking space, deal with hospitality, go through temperature checks, when they would rather go to something more comfortable. So I want to say prophetically to your colleagues and comrades, get ready for the overflow.
Yes, sir.
Because the fastest growing church in America are those who used to be members of your church who are now coming back home,
Wow.
who are going to look for that intimacy that they were able to get through streaming and cannot get in the crowd. I don't know if that's the direction you wanted me to go in, but that would be my opening statement.
You definitely hit the nail on the head. I was going to go down with, could you pinpoint where the growth came from? But since we're here, which is the heartbeat of this particular conference, would you speak to then what does relevant ministry look like in COVID-19 and post-COVID-19?
Yes. So relevant ministry is now being redefined. So those of us, Bishop, I don't know how old you are, but those of us who came up in 80s and 90s church, in order for your church to grow, you had to have a jam and choir,
Yes,
and
sir.
Rev got to pull it. If you got them two things, you can make it.
Yes,
Look
sir.
at what has happened in 17 weeks of COVID. I'm going to blow your mind. In 17 weeks of COVID, there is no choir. In
Yes, sir.
17 weeks,
Yes,
you
sir.
cut your entire music department in half. What is going to be able to sustain and grow your church are two things. One, service. What can I offer? What do I render? How am I valuable?
Yes,
What
sir.
is needed and necessary for people, hear this, to come to? The second thing that is going to be so critical, and many of you are not going to like it, and so consider this cod liver oil. It don't taste good, but it's healthy.
Yes, sir.
Is that COVID-19 has filtered our preaching. It has filtered our preaching, so there is no turn to your neighbor. There is no shake nobody hand.
Yes, sir.
There ain't no, I need 3 people to start running. And so sound doctrine is now going to have to come back to play, that you can't wait for your exit, but that you are intentional about your impartation. And people are going to be able to tell, does this man, this woman of God actually have something to say?
Yes, sir.
Or are they just hiding behind the cheerleading section?
Absolutely. I was watching a broadcast you did with E. Dewey Smith, Dr. R.A. Vernon, who happens to be my father in the gospel, by the way. You made a statement, it was bold, and I don't know if they were ready for it, where you said that we were going to have to get used to not building sanctuaries anymore. That if you were building a church and trying to erect a stage and a choir stand and a musician pit, you were doing the wrong job in this COVID-19 and post-COVID-19. Could you just
our sanctuaries, at the risk of being heretical, our sanctuaries are now our studios.
Yes, sir.
So that is where you are broadcasting from. It's not where people are coming to. So I just did a memorial service. Hear this, Bishop. I just did a memorial service for C.T. Vivian, John Lewis, and Joseph Lowry. Here's the benefit and the blessing of online. That pastor I pulled together in 6 hours.
Wow.
Under our own old strategy, we need time for people to advertise.
Yes,
We
sir.
got to get the word out. And those of us who are preachers, ain't no way you having service Saturday night and you expecting people to come back on Sunday.
Right.
On my way over to the studio tonight, it started raining and I was stress-free because I ain't worried about who ain't coming. It is, in the words of Joseph Walker, presiding bishop of Full Gospel, we are no longer counting footprints, is now fingertips.
Wow.
Yeah, so we got to look at it from a completely different vantage point.
Man, this is incredible information. I was talking to a few pastor friends of mine on my level. My church is not a big church. Although I have outstanding, I believe, vision, I always wanted to do something next level. And I was telling pastors, I believe COVID has killed the mega church. They would not believe me. And without even saying anything to you, you second that emotion right off the
I want to
bat.
say this that really bristles me just a little bit, Pastor, for us to reevaluate, is we have equated size with significance.
Yes, sir.
Let's not forget that David didn't lose his place because of Bathsheba.
Right.
He lost his place because he counted the people.
Yes, sir.
And I don't want us to have blood dripping from our hands about what is the significance based off of the scale. I think that it is a false narrative that sets us up for low self-esteem, for depression and anxiety, because we're looking at what the guy down the street is doing, what it is that they haven't. We do contrast analysis of how they preaching, what they're doing differently, and don't realize that it's not everybody's call. We look at history with rose-tinted windows, glasses, and when it is that Dr. King led the Montgomery bus boycott, it wasn't because he had the biggest church in town or the fastest growing. They put him in charge because he was new to town.
Yes, sir.
And so he had the least amount of liability. And so I want us to put that in the perspective.
Yes, sir. So since we're headed down that vein, let's talk about partnerships. Most people don't know if I've watched you intently for the last at least 15 years. I used to live in Maryland for about 20 years or so before I moved back to California, my home. And so what partnerships do pastors beginning pastorate or being in the pastorate for a little while don't necessarily have the fellowship connection? What partnerships are essential for a pastor in his city?
The partnerships that are essential are the partnerships that match your vision. So I was going after hip hop, millennials, Gen Xers. So I partnered with the R&B station because that's who I'm going after. So again, you got to look at what is your vision. So if in fact, Bishop, you don't have a heart, passion, or burden for voter registration, you don't need to partner with the NAACP
Right.
because it don't match your heartbeat. And so I would say find what it is that helps you to build what it is that your vision represents and reflects.
Yes, sir. Very good information. You don't know this. One of the pivotal points in my life, you were the second, not the first. The first was Dr. Todd Hall, who came into our city. You were the first person who spoke into my life, and you weren't necessarily getting something from it. Just a few months ago, Dr. Bryant, you may not remember it, you were filming from a room with a DJ that you had from Baltimore. I came on, I watch you on a regular basis. And I think when you saw my name, you didn't just call my name, but you said that you loved my mind. I was a pivotal voice for this season.
Yes.
And I wasn't really paying attention. I looked over to my wife and she saw me getting ready to fan out. She was like, babe, don't do it. I was going to lose. I was going to run around because oftentimes pastors who don't have big churches feel like they're not on the radar.
Yes,
People
I
of
saw you,
significance are not
sir.
watching them.
I saw you preach 2 years ago on YouTube, and your analysis of the text and the application was absolutely astounding. And I began to investigate you independently to find out who you were. And for those of you who are viewing us, he don't even know this information.
I don't.
And as a consequence, I went back and listened to 3 to 4 of your messages because I'm always enthralled by people who can think out loud, and you do that. What those of you who have smaller congregations need to understand is the moment you went online, you became global.
Yes, sir.
TBN is dead. Daystar is dead.
Please say
There
it
is
again.
no Azusa. Megafest is canceled. So every time you go online, know that you are preaching to nations, knowing that you're preaching to communities who you would never meet, whose hand you may never shake, but you're going to make an impact with.
Is there a disconnect now, or are we losing in the fellowship that validation? Some pastor is looking for some father figure in the gospel to say, this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. Are we losing that in this season? Or what do you say to that?
What you don't even understand is that now something has shifted, that fathers are in need of sons. Because your father in the gospel don't even know how to get online. Don't know how to set up a YouTube page. He trying to do his Bible. He's sitting in his living room with a full robe on.
Right.
He got the laptop propped up on 5 encyclopedias, and halfway through the sermon, the whole thing collapsing. The fathers need sons.
Yes, sir.
And so people are getting ready to emerge in ministry who otherwise would have never been considered or recognized.
Yes, sir. We are witnessing the crash of our economic system. And I think you talked about it earlier. We're going to hit this and maybe get off of it. But what do you say to the people who have received stimulus packages and are relying on government funds at this particular season? Is that going to last? Do we need to look into building different streams of income? What's your wisdom on that?
Yeah, no, we have to. And might I say, woe unto you pastors whose only source is the church plate. My grandfather told me when I started in ministry, he said to me, Jamal, the pastor who has to look in the offering plate to eat will always be hungry. So look at the impact of those who are full-time evangelists. They don't know what to do. So you're going to have to find what is your marketable skill and ask yourself, can I live at this level? Here's the catch, without the church.
Right.
For somebody, that was just a punch to the gut.
Right.
Can I live at this level if my church closes? because a lot of us are having to reevaluate what was our priority, and what was our drive, and what was our impetus. So yes, find several different streams of income, but don't do it as somebody who is desperate or thirsty.
Yes, sir.
Do it as somebody who is pursuing to make sure that I'm able to sustain my family.
Yes, sir. These are great, by the way. You're helping me while you're helping hundreds of other pastors who are
Yes.
online. Just a couple more questions, Dr. Jamal. I appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you.
Black men, not just black men anymore, black women, black boys, black girls are being killed in the streets at an alarming rate. We are burying them now, seem like every week. What is the pastor's job as the preacher or the community figure in their city?
Yes, I want to say, and I want to disarm some of you, I don't believe every pastor should march. I don't think every pastor should protest. It's not your calling, it's not your assignment. Dismiss the mythical notion that all the preachers were with Dr. King.
Yes,
The
sir.
National Baptist Convention split because they didn't want to support his endeavors for integration. And
Wow.
out of that came the Progressive Baptist Convention. And so some of you lend your churches for the young people to meet and to strategize. Others of you, you don't want to lend your space, drum roll, lend your Wi-Fi. Tell them they can use your parking lot and you ain't never going to let them in the building. Others of you find a way to bail some of the peaceful demonstrators out.
Yes,
Keep
sir.
the drum roll, pastors, not one denomination, PAW, Church of God in Christ, National Baptist Convention, AME, AME Zion, Full Gospel, none of them have called the body to a fast, to a season of praying.
Wow.
So some of you, your responsibility in this, travail for your city, that not another black man is killed by the police. Travail for your city, that those who were unjustly arrested, that evidence will be discovered and the case will be overturned. Travail in your city.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it amazing? I have never found a black church, here it is, that recruits police. We always talk about police that are bad or out of order. Why are we not raising up those who will be
Yes, sir.
gatekeepers in the city? So there are all different ways that churches can participate without protest.
Yes, sir. So I think every pastor needs to hear Dr. Jamal just really solidify its purpose over pressure.
Yeah.
I know what you see other preachers doing in the public, and what did God call you to do? What's your purpose, even in the kingdom? Well, last but not least, Dr. Jamal Bryant, like I said, I watch you every day.
Thank you,
I'm
sir.
watching all your moves. I have registered to be in Washington August
Thank
the
you.
28th. And I want you to speak to what's going to happen, how we're doing that with social distancing, so
Yes.
we can get more people involved.
Yes, the National Park, the Department of Parks and Recreation has just given us a permit for the very first time, Bishop, if you can fathom this. The Department of Parks and Recreation is giving us 100,000 masks. Let
Wow.
me say that again. Under the Trump administration, they're giving us 100,000 masks. And so Reverend Sharpton, Martin Luther King III, and myself are calling us to Washington, D.C. I am the faith coordinator in this trifecta, and I keep trumpeting aloud that the church has got to be involved and engaged because the Black Lives Matter movement is the only civil rights movement in the history of Black people in America that was not birthed out of the church.
Yes, sir.
As a consequence, the church has not had a voice in what is taking place. And so I want the church to come. I want the body of Christ to be there, standing in lockstep, believing we must march on until victory is won.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Dr. Jamal, for your time.
Thank you. And
wanna
again, I
come
apologize
to
for the time
Atlanta, just sit under your tutelage. Man, I promise this is one of the single best moments of my absolute life. And I appreciate you for it, sir.
I'm honored to be a part. I'm grateful. And let me just say a word to the pastors who are on. please, please, please monitor your self-care. If nobody else will tell you, allow me to be the first to tell you. Every pastor, I'm going to put this in exclamation points and in a larger case font. Every pastor contends with depression every
Yes,
45 to
sir.
60 days. Every 45 to 60 days, you're going to deal with depression, walk through it, find a nucleus group that will support you through it. All of us get frustrated,
Yes,
angry,
sir.
bitter. All of us want to quit, but hang on in there. That's why this forum is here, so that we can be encouraged and to be strengthened. Iron sharpens iron,
Yes,
and you
sir.
can't sharpen your iron being connected to people who have a plastic knife.
Bless you, Dr. Bryant, man. Have a great rest of your day. I know you got miles to go before you sleep.
Yes,
And
sir.
so I appreciate you, man.
Thank you. Have a great night. Blessings to your wife and blessings to all of you who are on.
All right.
Bless you.
So you have it here. You saw it. Dr. Jamal Harrison Bryant, he really concretized some of the ideas that it's purpose over pressure. Don't ever be pressured to feel like you have to grow your church to a certain size. He said it out of his mouth. He pastors one of the largest churches in our country, Black churches in our country, by the way. And he said he believes that COVID-19 is going to be the end of the mega church as we once thought. And so it is your responsibility. You're right. The reason why I called it small church, big vision, the time is now, is because I want you to understand without a shadow of a doubt that you can get your phone, you can get your iPad, you can broadcast from your laptop, and you can be just as relevant, just as poignant, just as revelational. Now you don't have to worry about a TBN budget. As much as $25 a month will get you to be where you can be able to broadcast on several areas. All right. So I want you to make sure you put that in prayer. You soak that in prayer. Let's go over something he said earlier. I think it's very important. I want you to understand what's essential right now is to make the partnerships that match your ministry. He said it very clearly that all pastors were not called to march or to protest. Maybe you were called to start prayer in your city, in your community, or in your district or jurisdiction. You have to find what God has purposed you to do. I thank y'all for joining in. Hopefully, I think we have a flyer coming up on the screen. I wrote a book, finishing a book entitled The Courage to Start from Scratch. This particular book is going to revolutionize the way you think about beginning ministry, entering ministry. There was one thing my mother taught me how to make, and that was a pound cake. 4 ingredients: butter, eggs, sugar, and flour. If the cake, hear me now, if the cake is good enough, you don't need icing. And I think for the last 20 years, we have gotten straight A's at great icing and mediocre cake. I believe COVID is helping to flip the narrative. And like Dr. Bryant said, it's going to be about context. It's going to be about content than big names or people of notoriety. I want you to make sure that if you're preaching to 10 or 15 or 1,000 people, that you're excavating out of the Word of God to get the riches that are in that book so people can be saved, delivered, healed, and set free. I'm your boy, Bishop-elect D.L. Edwards. Do not miss tomorrow at 1:30. I'm going to be preaching the second chapter from this book entitled Pushing and Pulling. 3 characteristics that every church needs. So I'm going to be preaching, pushing, and pulling. Make sure that you don't miss it. Set your notifications now. Tomorrow at 1:30, the afternoon effect, it is going to be the second installment of Small Church Big Vision. I promise you, you're going to be blessed. Meet me tomorrow for the second installment of Small Church Big Vision. Tomorrow I'm preaching, pushing, and pulling. You don't want to miss it. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for joining.